What the hell is going on?
Emily Thornberry. Who are these clowns running this country? Excellent question. We'll get to that later. First, we must clear this up. How heavy is he? Donald Trump was officially revealed to be overweight after the results of his physical were released on Tuesday, but some are claiming that the president must be heavier than his official 239-pound weight. Maybe they mean he wears 239 pounds worth of hairspray. Referencing Trump's old calls for his predecessor, Barack Obama, to release his birth certificate, which was dubbed the birther movement, critics of the president have come up with a new hashtag, the Girther movement. And the director of Guardians of the Galaxy, which is, I've got no idea, some kids' movie, I would imagine, a fellow called James Gunn, has already offered to donate $100,000 to the charity of Trump's choice if he steps on a scale. You know, one of those squeaky weight machines. Like, we'd say something like, one at a time. That old joke. Is a bloke called Dr. Ronnie Jackson, who's not as alarming as Donald Trump's actual personal physician, who, if you haven't looked him up on the World Wide Web yet, I recommend that you do. But you might want to sit down first. Go ahead, I double dare you. Look up Donald Trump's personal physician on the internet, and then a lot of things start to become really, really plain. A lot of questions become answered. But this is a different doctor. He's the White House physician, and he declared that Trump was in excellent health. Right. He said he has a lot of energy and a lot of stamina. No, he doesn't. Do you remember that incident? Was it at the, I can't remember where it was, the US? It was some meeting of bigwigs. Everybody else walked. It was about 100 metres, there or thereabouts. Everybody else walked. All these other world leaders took to their feet. Donald Trump took a golf cart. A lot of energy. According to Dr. Ronnie, Donnie is 239 pounds at a height of 6'3", and neither of those two things are right. Because if Barack Obama, you remember the ex-president of the United States of America? Yes, that's the fella. He is 6'2", and Donald Trump and Barack Obama standing next to each other. They're pretty much exactly the same height. If anything, Donald Trump's smaller. I'm not saying that the doctor or the president of the United States are selling misinformation, but you know. So according to Dr. Ronnie, Donnie is 239 pounds at a height of 6'3", giving him a BMI, body mass index, of 29.9. And guess where you have to be if you're going to be classed as obese? 30, as in 0.1 more. 29.9. What a coincidence. If he'd been 30 instead of 29.9, he'd be officially classed as obese. So it's a good job that Donnie is so fit and active. Some also question whether his height was correct. You know, he's actually written down on his New York driver's license as 6'2". If he was 6'2", his BMI would be higher and see him fall into the official obese category, so he said he's 6'3". Either his weight or his height is fake news. Oh, here's something else that came out of that examination, by the way. Donald Trump is mentally sound. Can you believe that?
No.
They made a big play about this. Oh, he scored 30 out of 30 on the Montreal Cognitive Assessment Test, which is apparently a big deal with the psychologists. I studied psychology for 4 years, and what I know about the subject you could write on the back of a stamp. I've never heard of it, but, you know, trained professionals probably have. It's the Montreal Cognitive Assessment Test. And he took that test, and there was apparently no indication that he has cognitive issues, which very much sounds like he doesn't have a brain at all. But no, there are no issues with his cognition, I can tell you that. Like millions of people call me all the time and say how fantastic my cognition is. Believe me. Or words to that effect. The doctor said he's very sharp, he's very articulate when he speaks to me, said Dr. Ronnie. Really? Well, how about when he speaks to us? Could he be very sharp and articulate when he speaks to us?
I'm very highly educated. I know words, I have the best words.
And by the way, that cognitive test, it's not very thorough. You're supposed to get 30 out of 30. If you don't get 30 out of 30, alarm bells start warning.
Warning! Warning!
It's things like, can you identify what this is, and it's a picture of a lion? Or can you draw a clock face? So he passed that. Could identify a clock face when he saw, one of those things that goes... Yeah. So nothing to see here. Please move along. Unless you're a porn star. Well, it's just past the first year of the, it seems like so much longer than that, don't it, of the orange catastrophe that is the Donald Trump presidency. Yeah, 1 year old, there or thereabouts. So we'll celebrate it by dragging his name through the mud. Why not? Last week, we heard that President Donald Trump's lawyer, Michael Cohen, had paid porn star Stormy Daniels, as in rain expected, $130,000 to keep quiet about a decade-old sexual relationship she had with the future president. And this lawyer released a statement from the porn star denying that she engaged in any sexual and or romantic affair with Donald Trump, but immediately other accounts emerged challenging that denial, because she'd apparently spoken about it at the time to her Bezzy mates. And gave interviews to newspapers, but that was for a very special reason. I'll come to that in a minute. In 2009, this porn star called Stormy Daniels, as in rain expected, was considering a career in politics. This just gets better and better. And if that sounds unlikely, that a porn star called Stormy Daniels would consider a career in politics, then remember what we've got now is a bright orange con man off the telly as the leader of the free world. I mean, it couldn't get much stranger than that, could it?
Oh, shut up!
Well, according to 2009 emails between political operatives who were at the time advising Stormy Daniels on a possible political campaign, this porn star claimed that her affair with Trump included, but was not limited to. And you may want to grip onto something firm here, because this next bit may alarm and distress. The porn star claimed that her affair with Trump included spanking him with a copy of Forbes magazine. Isn't that exactly what you would expect Donald Trump to insist on? Not any old magazine, but the finance Bible for billionaires. But it's better than that, because guess who was on the cover of that issue of the magazine? That's right, Donald Trump.
Oh, no.
Donald Trump apparently was spanked with a copy of Forbes magazine on which his face appeared on the cover. In a 7-year-old interview with a magazine called In Touch, appropriately, which was published only this week, Stormy Daniels described Trump obsessively watching Shark Week in his hotel room during one of their visits. And if you go back to 2013 and look at Donald Trump's tweets of that time, he was expressing strong views on sharks on the World Wide Web. This Stormy Daniels also noted that the first time that she met Trump, he invited her to a hotel room and boastfully showed off a magazine cover featuring himself before they had sex. Isn't that perfectly Donald? You'd be surprised if that hadn't happened. And this was supposedly hushed up by Trump promising to pay her $130,000 to keep quiet. And she only did those interviews with the press at the time. And here's another element that kind of makes you believe that all this is true. She said apparently the reason that she did the interviews at the time was because she didn't think that Trump was going to pay her the money to keep quiet, is the allegation. How totally Trump is that? Weaseling his way out of for paying people who work for him. Even though, as he keeps saying,
I make $400 million a year, so what difference does it make?
I mean, it's more believable than Donald Trump's so-called excellent health screening results and the story about him being 6'3" and only 239 pounds. That's 17 stone, by the way. One of his legs would weigh 17 stone. He just shades it into the overweight category. He's the fattest non-obese person ever. It must be all those all those brains he has to carry around. They must weigh so much.
Trust me, I'm like a smart person.
And by the way, Stormy Daniels is one of several women associated with the pornography business who claimed to have had sensual interface with Donald Trump. In 2016, a porn star called Jessica Drake said that Trump had kissed her without consent and offered her $10,000 for sex. On November the 4th, 2016, the Journal reported that the National Enquirer, owned by Trump pal David Pecker, paid former Playboy centerfold Karen McDougal $150,000 for the rights to her account of a 10-month-long affair with Trump, and then published no story on the purported relationship. So nothing happened then, you'd have to assume. I'll tell you what, I would like to have no relationship with Donald Trump for $150,000. Any other takers? $150,000 not to have sex with a screaming Mimi? Show of hands. Not you, Melania. You're one of those people that gets the massive hump. And I know that it's amazing to me, but I know that there are a lot of people who listen to this station who really, really love Donald Trump and get into a right old huff when anybody starts to bad-mouthing him because they think that everybody believes what they do, that Donald Trump is the most fantastic thing that's ever existed and he's just huge and enormous and tremendous. Now, they think that that everybody thinks like that because they only talk to people who think like that. That is the invidious nature of the internet. Or insidious, not invidious, insidious nature of the internet. Well, a little peek into a thing called reality. Does anybody still believe in facts?
No.
1 year into Donald Trump's presidency, the image of the US leadership is weaker worldwide than it has ever been. This is an average approval rating across 134 countries. Wow, somebody really had a lot of time on their hands and vast amounts of money at their disposal. 134 countries who expressed a preference said that Donald Trump is the absolute worst thing that they've ever seen. No, not the worst thing they've ever seen. The worst person they've ever seen running a country. They've probably seen worse things than that. A new low of 30% approval. That's across the world. I'm giving you this as a public service to people who think that everybody that agrees with them that Donald Trump is huge. No, they don't. It's 4 points lower than the previous low of 34%, and that was the last year of President George W. Bush's administration. And George W. Bush used to be he used to set the low bar. Well, Donald Trump's limboed right underneath it.
Absolutely.
Donald Trump's on 30% approval rate. By the way, Obama, the Donald Trump's evil Muslim Kenyan terrorist nemesis, he was on 48% in his last year. 48% worldwide approval rate. Donald Trump hits a new low on 30. I bet it's Hillary Clinton's fault. Disapproval of the US leadership increased almost as much as approval declined. So it's not just that people don't approve of him, they actually positively disapprove. People aren't saying about Donald Trump. They have strong opinions. He sets a new record of disapproval as well, not only for the US, but for any other major global power that the polling firm Gallup has asked about in the past decade. He's absolutely, positively, certifiably the worst ever.
I've been successful in every business I've been in.
Portugal, Belgium, Norway and Canada led the declines in how they think about him worldwide, with approval ratings of the US leadership dropping 40 points or more in each country. In other words, they loved Obama. Thought he was great. I thought he was doing a pretty good job myself, under the circumstances. But Donald's approval ratings, just the approval rating of the presidency's fallen off a cliff.
You are going to love President Trump.
And the nearer people are to him, the less they like him. In the Americas, approval ratings dropped to a new low, 24%. Wow. There's some diseases who get a better approval rating than that. 24% of people in the Americas approve of the US leadership. And that's half what it was under the last year of the Obama administration. And I do get the sense, because I've talked to people before who call up and say, you know, it's a blooming disgrace you on the air like bad mouthing the president, and he's just tremendous and great and huge. You have to talk to other people than the people that are on your internet feed. Because in Europe, his approval rating is 25%. Which means that the people that are gripped with the notion that Donald Trump is great are talking to such a tiny minority of people that it's kind of alarming that they would still think that there wouldn't be some kind of pushback. But, like I said, that's the insidious nature of the internet. Thanks a lot, Tim Berners-Lee. More people worldwide disapprove of the American leadership than the Russian leadership, or even China's. That's really saying something, Donny. You're breaking new ground. And the most approved? Well, go on, have a guess. It's kind of depressing. Well, a little bit. Germany. Yep, they beat us again. Suppose we're used to it by now. Speaking of Germany, by the way, well, they're neighbours. They're part of the EU project. France was represented by Emmanuel Macron. He visited Theresa May, and they had a chinwag, and I think it came out really badly. He said, and it's not a surprise, we know this, they've been saying the same thing over and over and over again. But it did make a few people blow their lids. Emmanuel Macron said that Britain's financial sector won't get full access to the single market unless we pay billions and billions and billions of pounds to Brussels and we follow EU laws forever. Hey, but at least we'll have our country back, right? He had a joint press conference with Theresa May this week, and they were getting on like, well, not really like a house on fire. It's more like there was a small spark, nothing much. He had a nice dinner. I'll get to that in a minute. They had a press conference, and Theresa May and the French president, they sort of looked like, I don't know, one of them looked like a world leader, and the other looked like not. But anyway. The French president said the UK is going to be offered only a limited trade deal unless it agrees to be bound by the rules of the single market. So that's it. Case closed. We're staying. I've been saying this over and over and over again until I'm blue in the face. When we leave, it's not going to seem as though we've left. It'll be the exact bloomin' same thing. You won't notice it. We will only be offered a limited trade deal unless we agree to all of the rules that we're bound by now and pay all of the money that we're paying in now and maintain the regulations of the single market. So what's the point of leaving? Well, why are we going through all this? And you know, Mrs. M's already ruled that out. I think she's ruling it out because that's what she thinks that certain voluble people want to hear, mentioning no names.
I'm a nutcase.
Certain really, really loud people who just keep going on and on and on about it, that's what they want to hear. I'm sure in private she actually is already signed up for following the rules and paying the money and etc. and so on. They're just going to couch it in different terms so it will appear at a glance to to those that can't be bothered to look very closely, that we've extricated ourselves from the European Union, and we certainly aren't paying into that project anymore, and we're not beholden to their rules. But actually, we will be. It's what the banks want, and because we are utterly beholden to the banks, that's what they'll get. Because the French president, he comes over here and he says, I want to make sure that the single market is preserved because that is very much the heart of the European Union. He speaks English better than I do. He says, so the choice is on the British side, not my side. There can be no differentiated access to financial services. See, and that's a big stumbling point for us because that's what we do for a living, financial services. Financial services and us buying things we can't afford with money we haven't got. And selling the weapons of mass destruction. There is that. But mostly we're an offshore tax avoidance racket. I know that doesn't really sit well with our sense of patriotism, but yeah, that's what we pretty much do for a living. Banking, which is, the bank's business model, as you know, from every story that you've read over the last 10 years, is fraud. That's what they do for a living. Been fined billions and billions and billions of pounds for their misdeeds, is what they call it. And almost no one at all from the top floors has gone to prison. I think Iceland did a pretty good job of sticking them in jail, but in this country they just continued to do the exact same thing that they did before. There was absolutely no impediment put in their way, and they just kept awarding themselves bonuses for a job well done. And it's because of that we know. I mean, it's obvious that we are totally. Theresa May is actually not running this country. The leaders of the top 5 main banks are running this country. So whatever they want is what they'll get, and what they want is unfettered access to defraud people across borders. So that's the end of it. The will of the people can go and blow it out of its hat. But there was some blowback from the usual suspects, and that meal is worth investigating as well. Alan says, so Boris wants to build a bridge, Trump wants to build a wall, and Kim Jong-un wants to build a nuke. Can't we all just club together and buy some Lego? How about Meccano would be a better idea. I mean, you can make things with the Meccano that actually work and go round, and like a mechanical thing. Like a clock, for instance. Harry says the Met Office failed to give midweek storm warnings. The Met Office is a total waste of public money and it should be abolished. Please discuss. They have a computer the size. I think I'm correct when I say this. Well, I'm correct when I say everything. They have a computer that's as big as a football field. Can you believe that? No. It's like they just stick their head out the window and guess. I think that's true. I think the computer that they use to tell us what the weather's not going to be like is the size of an actual football field. Gerard says, greetings from Europe. That story is just a Stormy Daniels in a DD cup. That story just keeps getting better and better, don't it? Thanks for the chuckles, Donny. Chiswick, hello, Milan.
Hey, Nick. When it comes to trying to understand the logic of Leave MPs like Boris, the face I pull is like if I'm trying to divide 439 by 13.
400, I'll do that for you in my head. I'm going to do mental arithmetic on the radio. Oh, no. 439 by 19 is a very easy one, actually. It's, I think you'll find it's 63.
Affirmative.
63.
Boris has just truly gone bonkers. Like, where do I start? There's no magic money tree for the police and fire brigade and...
Yeah. Or the NHS. Don't forget the NHS.
Yeah, exactly. And then he wants to be out of the single market, the customs union, but yet he wants to build a bridge to the EU. I mean, how's that going to work? Because if you want to be out of the single market and union, everything going over has to be checked, either your lorries, either you want to go across.
I thought that people were pulling their hair out about the whole people stowing away on lorries thing. Now we want to make it easier for them?
Yeah.
What's going to happen at the other side when this vast stretch of traffic is halted and everything going into or out of France has to be checked for stowaways or cheese or whatever it might be?
Yeah, I know. But this is another example of Boris just being Boris. I mean, even as a mayor, he was a woeful mayor. I mean, stuff that he would eradicate rough sleeping. It doubled. He would, London Underground fares, he would halt it. It increased by 4%. And when he came to the referendum, he said, yeah, that's fine. We one part of the Leave campaign. We can have single market, free movement. And he's like, oh, actually, we can't. And he's so confused. I don't think he understands a thing about Brexit.
I get the feeling that a lot of the people who are now full-on Brexiteers didn't actually believe in that position at the beginning of this process. They have come to that conclusion because, from my perspective, it looks like they've come to that conclusion because they think it will do them well as far as their career goes.
Certain Leave MPs or certain...
The Leavers. Yeah, I mean,
the Leavers, yeah.
Almost nobody in Parliament actually wanted to leave. I mean, the percentage was enormous of those who wanted to stay. And now suddenly there's a vast number of people who said, oh, well, I've said this all along. But no, they didn't. No. And Boris is one of them.
And even if you wanted to leave, at least you should have some legally compliant solutions. I mean, what they're saying is bonkers. They say, right, we want control of our borders, but we want to be out of the single market and have an open border with Ireland. But how can you control your borders if you have no border with Ireland? Because anyone from Romania can go straight into Dublin and then walk over to Northern Ireland. Yeah. How's that going to work?
I've got no idea, but I mean, nobody thought about that when this. It's almost as though that's just crept into people's consciousness. In fact, I think it actually has. Somebody just said one day, a couple of months ago, they thought, hey, what about Northern Ireland? And the entirety of Westminster looked at each other, dumbstruck, and thought, oh yeah, Northern Ireland. Forgot about that.
But that's Westminster, and all of us in the Remain part were saying, well, there was programmes on Newsnight, articles in Daily Telegraph, etc., saying Ireland is a massive issue, but Westminster and the Leavers are like, blah, 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 blah. We want control of our borders, and, you know... But, and just never hadn't thought about that. So you can't have your cake and eat it, which is what Boris wants to do. And when you say to them, the reality is you can't have your cake and eat it, you get two responses. You either get will of the people, or we had a referendum when I voted to leave. I mean, that's fine, but what are the solutions that are legally compliant? And they look at you dumbfounded and they start abusing you.
Yeah. Well, nobody wants to think about, well, anything really, but particularly this, as it's too complicated. And so people have jumped to a conclusion one way or the other without looking at the facts, without doing a cost-benefit analysis or any of these things that people are pretending they've done. No, they didn't. They thought, let's not kid ourselves, they thought, do we want fewer foreigners? Yes. Right, that's it then. And any argument to the contrary that it might not be actually good for the country or, you know, our health and wealth and happiness is just is completely ignored because it goes against the initial decision. It's almost as though people have invested the future of their lives on this decision. Like people have rounded up all of the money that they have in the world to buy one lottery ticket, and they refuse to countenance the notion that they're not going to win.
Yeah, exactly. Can I say something very quickly that's controversial?
Oh, you like the new Star Wars film? Please tell me you don't like the new Star Wars film.
It's all right. It's not one of the best.
It's all right. There's some good explosions. I particularly like the one with the guitar sound that accompanies it.
Rock and roll!
That's a great explosion. Best explosion ever.
Right, I hope this doesn't offend anyone.
Oh, no, here we go. Get ready.
But if you go to the cinema and you think it's the restaurant, a coffee shop, or a pub, or a mobile phone shop, you're an utter moron, because I've had to deal with that the last weekend.
This is why I don't go to the cinema. I go to the cinema about once a year. I'll go when the new Star Wars film comes out because it's not part of the Star Wars saga. It's an offshoot, like the what was that one that came out that was actually good?
Rogue One, was it?
Yeah, Rogue
No.
Rogue One. That was Rogue One.
Yeah.
That was excellent, and it's the only one that's been good since since the new lot to start, since Disney took over. But that'll be the only film that I go and see this year at the cinema. What do you keep going to the cinema for, Milan? Morons are surrounding you in the cinema, as you know. You just described it to me.
Well, I saw 3. I saw Molly's Game, which is good. I then looked after my godson and saw Jumanji, and I saw Insidious.
God, you are a sucker for punishment, aren't you?
Oh, do you know what? If I win the lottery, I'm going to buy every seat in the cinema and then go by myself.
Just buy yourself a big telly and a decent sound system. It'd be cheaper.
I know, this experience.
Experience. Yeah, you experience somebody with their feet on the back of your seats, pushing and like drumming as though they're, I don't know, as though they've got some kind of St. Vitus dance, or there's something seriously wrong with them. And other people just cannot put their phone down. Oh, for crying out loud, kids, put your phones down. Understand that you are addicted. It's like a drug. Wean yourself off it.
So true. Oh, well, there's one woman who started to look at her phone for the entire film. Why pay for a ticket for a cinema film? And if you can look at your phone the whole time.
Amazing. It's just
morons.
Morons. We're surrounded by morons, Milan. Never leave the house. That's my best advice. There's a reason that Boris's bridge, not that bridge that sounded like a delight that has been canned by the mayor who likes to say no, that was going to go over London's Thames River. I was looking forward to that, the Garden Bridge. It wasn't Boris's bridge, but because Boris was the mayor at the time, he had his name appended to it. He was going around appending his blooming name to everything. Boris Bridge, Boris Island, this, that and the other. Not that I'm saying that he occupied that position in order to promote himself rather over London, but But yeah, this bridge that he has now suggested that people are actually talking seriously about between us and French France. There's an excellent reason that I don't think anybody's mentioned yet that it can't happen. Connect Pip in Welling. Come in, Pip.
Hello, Nick. I know you're going to think this is reckless and stupid,
no.
but I can't take it anymore. I simply don't care.
Don't do it, Pip.
No, I'm no longer enthralled to these, Macron and people like that saying, we are going to have to pay millions of pounds to maintain this whole system, this obsession with preserving the banking services sector, which is frankly the most repellent set up. Everything that's wrong in our country is this banking and services industry. We've just gone through 10 years of a global recession, which has left an entire generation never able to buy a house. I'm not prepared to continue this. We have to do something, and like in any illness, you've got to swallow the medicine and not spit it, and we've got to accept that none of these people know, because it's difficult, how to write the new words to frame this. But I don't care about the single market. I want to trade with the rest of the world, which is where we get all our raw materials from to make our machinery and our wealth. We've just got to change the way we're thinking, and frankly, we as the public have got nothing to lose. And
we do. We've got loads to lose. Money. It's all about the money, honey. But no, I agree with you. Wouldn't it be nice if we weren't so beholden to the banking racket?
Yeah.
And I think we have Margaret Thatcher, as we used to say when I was a student, Margaret Thatcher, as I've heard to thank her for that, because we have hooked our donkey our cart to their donkey. And now we're stuck with them, because without them we're sunk.
Well, we think that we might,
That's all right.
But we're frightened of our own shadow. This is Look,
Well, I'll tell you what we're frightened of. We're frightened of short-termism. It's what's going to do for the human race, and that's the reason that we can't extricate ourselves. Now we are stuck with them. We can't extricate ourselves from the bank's hold and their sway over us. Because
well,
if we
fear
did,
that
if
we're going to lose all this business,
well, perhaps
it's going to go elsewhere. Well, some of it might do, but don't forget, this is still London, and London is like no other place. It is only one sector. We used to make stuff that people used to want to buy.
Yeah.
We have got to grow up and actually think differently. Think old style, like we used to. We can't feed ourselves. We can't do anything. And we've had another company like Carillion, and that's not happened overnight. And we're all, loads of people were party to
this is how staggeringly badly this country is being managed. Is that anybody who had a glancing association with that company knew that it was in trouble for years, and yet the government still kept awarding them contract after contract after contract. So either the government is utterly inept, or there's something crooked going on. So I'm going with inept.
Okay, you're kinder. Honestly, it's all rot. It's rotten, isn't it?
But to finish that thought, what is alarming is that these inept people are now the ones that are going to be negotiating our way through the most complicated contract that we have ever.
But unless we stop, we're going to maintain this.
We'll have to maintain it because I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why we're going to have to maintain it, and why we're going to have to keep the status quo exactly as it is, and that there will be no difference when we're out of the EU to when we're in the EU, other than we'll be a bit poorer and we'll have less control. The reason is because too many people will lose in the short term, and every single one of them has got a vote.
Well, frankly, I don't think most ordinary people actually will be any different.
Well, Pip, when was the last time you went and did your food shopping?
Every day.
Right. Have you noticed that? I noticed
my butter's gone up. Virtually 60p.
Butter, fruit, vegetables, everything.
Also, it's the whole. Mind you, I find the retail is all a bit bent anyway. They have these artificially prices. It's they call it the Brexit effect. Well, hang on a sec. What are you talking about? It's butter. We make it in the UK. I think we are too passive and accept stuff.
Well, let me tell you about the supermarket trade. Not a single supermarket would put a penny on anything unless they absolutely had to. There's a massive supermarket war it's an ongoing war. It's the war that never ends.
Well, I think it's a bit of a cartel actually, because each day they all check each other's stuff out, and they just shuffle the prices from one store to another. If you actually bother to look, again, it's all fake. And
I disagree. I completely disagree. Like Waitrose does not have the same pricing structure as Aldi.
I meant the Sainsbury's and Tesco.
All right. Well, Sainsbury's and Tesco's don't have the same pricing structure as Aldi or Lidl. I mean, they're strangling each other to death. Well, at least that's the way it looks like from the outside.
They're brilliant. And they're all
supermarkets are
European brothers and sisters.
All supermarkets are doing us a favour. They are. We have more food of greater quality available to us now than any time in history.
Our own, Nick, though.
What?
The EU created so many bizarre things with the Common Agricultural Policy. We had our wine lakes, our butter mountains. We paid people to produce nothing. It was bonkers. And we've just got to keep it simple. And actually, none of us know. And actually, ordinary people it will make no difference. We're going to be losers one way or other. But ultimately, we can only do better than what we're doing now. Because what we're doing now is revolting.
Yeah, but Pip, do you want to wait 50 years?
I haven't got 50 years.
Well, exactly. The economy is like a supertanker. You can't just turn it around on a sixpence. It'll take decades and decades and decades. I mean, just to try to rebalance the economy away from the banks is going to take several generations. It just can't happen overnight. And as for us, wait a minute. And as for us feeding ourselves for farming, forget it. The farming industry in this country is on its last legs. By which I mean the farmers are. The average age of the farmer in this country is about 60 years old. Young people don't want to do farming.
Well, because they've had the heart ripped out of it, because we're having to export or...
And so how are you going to persuade a new generation of people that farming is just for them? You're not going to be able to do that. So this idea that we're going to be able to feed ourselves, if only we can get out from under the evil EU influence, is just, you're dreaming.
Well, we used to.
Well, we used to do a lot of things, Pip. We used to tie women to a chair and duck them into water to check whether they were witches or not.
No, but now we're being a bit dull. But the thing is, how we are is just not good enough. And look, I just think we should aim high, for God's sake. And actually,
you're high. Is that what you just said?
No, I said we should. Sorry, but I get nervous. We should aim higher.
Oh, I thought you said that you were.
God help, you know.
Thought, blimey, I had no idea. I've been talking to you for what? To 6 minutes now.
But people, governments or councils are making fortunes in America from their weed taxation.
Yes, California is going to be making $1 billion in tax in 1 year now that it's legalized the marijuana. $1 billion. That's just California.
Not to be sniffed at. But going back to banking, there's some great new funding now. Banking is changing. It's not the old. Things are. We are able.
What do you mean? What do you mean changing?
For financing new projects and stuff, there's a new way. There's new funding thing. You know, like not crowdfunding. You know, there's new ways of helping. Look, what we're not doing is creating an environment for new business to flourish. We absolutely hammer the small businessman. We've just got to rejig it. So actually, we can actually create business and wealth and actually have decent jobs. But when I was a kid, if I came home and said to my dad, I've got a job and it's 0 hours, he'd throw a dictionary at my head and tell me to spell the word, you know, unemployed. Because 0 hours is not a job, and yet we're told and we accept the mantra that we've got full employment. No, we haven't.
Well,
it's all rubbish.
We do, in a sense. I mean, there's fewer people. It's not only that we have full employment. The other side of the argument, it looks rosy as well, because fewer people are taking benefits than they certainly used to, and so it's not that people are in 0 hours contracts and they're not earning any money, and so they have to take benefits. There are fewer people actually are on benefits as well. I mean, the government may be jigging those figures too. I don't know.
Or the food banks. Nick, in 10 years, the heart's come out of our country, and we're not being very nice about it, and we're also being a bit lazy. Anyway, I've had the whinge, so I appreciate you not biting me.
Okay. I would be delighted if we could rebalance the economy away from the insidious influence of the banking racket. But I think that we've allied ourselves to them. We've sort of sold our soul to the banks and the Qataris. You know, everything that isn't owned by the Queen in London is owned by the Qataris. And so to rebalance the economy now would take decades. So either we want to go through an enormous amount of pain for a future that may be brighter, or we'll just stick with it and, you know, do that British thing of, well, mustn't grumble, but then grumble a lot. I think that the latter is probably more likely, because no politician wants anything bad to happen in the short term. They don't care if bad things happen in the long term, because they'll be busy enjoying their retirement. I just want to say that the economy is doing fantastic, and I don't want to take any credit, but it's all because of me. It's huge. The jobs. He takes credit for absolutely everything. The jobs were increasing under the previous administration, but he takes credit for that too. And the notion that he can turn around an economy in one short year, and everything that's happening that is good is because of his orange magnificence. He's just shameless, or just totally ignorant. Maybe both at the same time. I don't think that he's a very nice person.
Donald Trump is not a nice person.
Yeah, like I said. And the stock market is doing great. Well, who benefits from the stock market doing great? Almost nobody. Despite popular misconceptions about who constitutes the ownership of the stock market, it's almost no one at all. So the 0.01% continue to get even more stratospherically rich, and what we're expecting is it's that again, a trickle-down economy all over us. People are still talking about this Boris Bridge, and as though this is a serious suggestion. I'm going to nip it in the bud. But first I have to talk to this nice lady in Clapham. Hello, Janet.
Hello, Nicholas.
Janet.
Hello. I really, really like you and listen to you every weekend, but you're a little bit left for me.
But I'm not, though. See, this is the thing. People, you'd have to be so far on the right to think that I'm left-wing.
Wait, I don't think you're as left-wing as James O'Brien.
Because, this is another one of those, you and James O'Brien calls.
No, it's not.
But sometimes I'm right. It depends what we're talking about. I'm a libertarian. I think that people should be able to do whatever they want as long as it doesn't interfere with anybody else's pleasure in life.
No.
So if you've got one of those yappy dogs, for instance, then I'm very, very right-wing in that I think that you should be put through a crusher. Or, that's not a left-wing thing to say, is it? So it just depends what we're talking about.
Very true, very true. I think you're very anti-Donald Trump, though. You must admit.
See, the thing is, I'm conflicted about Donald Trump because he is, without question, the most entertaining and gripping thing that has gone on in politics since the Second World War. There's just no doubt about it. He's fantastic.
True. Yeah.
But I wish that he was
a lot of airtime.
Yeah, I wish that he was just on television rather than the leader of the free world. Because as he said himself,
I'm president. Can you believe it?
No, not really. Even when people say, you hear it on the news, President Donald Trump, and it just still grates. You still think, no, Trump, president. Oh yeah, that's right.
To be honest, the only thing he said in the last year that's really, I thought to myself, oh my God, was my button is bigger than your button. I just thought, no, you can't say that.
But that's him all over. He's obsessed with size, which is really bizarre because he's only up until when it's his relative fatness. Then he wants to be smaller, but only on that score. Everything else, much, much bigger than real life.
I mean,
hey, where did you go? Oh, there you are.
Oh, sorry. The only thing I can say is the last 7 years under Obama, there's not much you can talk about, really, is there?
Well, at least we didn't. We weren't fearful of World War III.
I don't know. I think he let down a lot of people. To be honest, they were so over the moon that he got in and he did nothing. And he's just like.
Well, it's not true that he did nothing. That's untrue. He was stymied at every turn by a Republican Party who told him to his face on the first day of his leadership that they said, we aren't going to work with you on anything. Even the things that they wanted, they refused to work with him on. And they just voted down absolutely everything because they just couldn't stand the... But that's how the right play the game, like really nastily. The left they're just too nice for their own good, and they just don't. Although they, at the moment, they seem to have been they've taken some of the plays out of the right wing handbook, and this sticking their heels in about the dreamers and potentially shutting down the government.
Could I pull you up on something we just said?
Okay then.
The left is nice because they're not.
A little bit too nice for their own goods.
No, not over here. Over in England, they're not.
Well, like who? Who?
John McDonnell.
John McDonnell. Right. Well.
Absolutely.
Where have he gone?
unbelievable.
Where have you gone? Please speak directly into the phone.
Sorry.
Oh, there you are.
John McDonnell, you think he's nice, what he says?
I don't know.
No, he's not.
Oh, all right then.
No, he's really not.
Okay. John McDonnell, you're not a nice person. There you are. How's that sound?
I love you, Sam.
All right. I don't know why. Chrissy says the tangerine, or the tangerine. Well, I call him the Tangerine Scream, as in Tangerine Dream. You remember Tangerine Dream from the old Grey Whistle Test days?
Groovy.
Oh yeah, Tangerine Dream.
Rock and roll!
German, weren't they? With their bloomin' European music. Anyway, Chrissy says the tangerine must have a tongue like a lizard or a trunk. I wouldn't be intimate with him for any money, and I wouldn't have to look at him as I'm registered blind. Actually, the Gorgon would turn to stone if she looked at him. Wow, I thought I was unkind, Chrissy. Whew. Paul says, what about driving cars on different sides of the road on the bridge causing head-on crashes? Oh, yeah, well, that's right. Nobody's thought about that. Yeah, once again, Boris, you are caught with your pants down.
Yeah. Wait a minute.
So to speak. Dave says, do you remember the future's bright, the future is orange slogan? We'll live happily ever after. Here's a call in, well, as long as everything's going to be all right. Chertsey, hello, Tony.
Oh, hi there, Dick.
Tony.
No, hi there. No, I think that that bridge sounds a good idea, and it's possible to get around that left and right thing.
Yeah, but that's not the reason why it can't be built.
No, what is the reason then?
Well, let's get to the end of your thing, and then I'll tell you.
At the end of my thing. Okay. Well, what I was thinking about, you mentioned that Trump's pretty interesting and the most enjoyable thing to have happened to politics for a long time.
Ever.
Oh, no, I don't think ever. We've had some extremely interesting prime ministers.
Please. Like who?
Robert Walpole.
Well, I wasn't alive.
No, I know. No, neither was I. But there's stuff written, though. It is written that Robert Walpole died at 57 of things associated with overindulgence.
Yeah.
What a surprise. And he was known as a 3-bottle man because he would always consume at least 3 bottles of port at a single sitting.
Port?
So, yeah. So he must have been, he did die of gout. So he must have been a bit of a live wire.
Well, no, he just was drunk. By the sounds of it.
Well, like they all
3 bottles of port wouldn't make you a live wire. It would just make you unconscious.
Well, it'd make you live for the first bottle.
I suppose so, yeah. And you could say ditto Churchill and his Paul Roger.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yes, he was a lover of champagne and all that, wasn't he?
Yeah.
And brandy.
And not paying his bill. There was that story where he famously ran up a massive bill for booze and then didn't pay it. Huh.
Oh, really? Oh, I hadn't heard of that one.
Yeah.
Well,
and a gambler as well.
And a gambler?
Apparently.
Oh, right. Oh,
have I got that right? I think so.
Yeah, probably.
Well, if I don't, then, nobody cares because we're not interested in facts anymore. Everybody's just making stuff up. I don't have to look anything up. You just make it up and it instantly becomes true.
Yeah, okay. That's fair enough. But what about the scientific method, though, Nick?
The what?
Which can establish whether what you say or think is actually true.
The scientific... How could you apply the scientific method to whether Donald Trump is the most fabulous thing that's ever happened to politics?
You are going to love President Trump.
I say that he is.
Well, I think you're possibly right. But the scientific approach to establish whether that's actually true would be to formulate a theory, which you have already done, that he is the most significant thing to hit politics for a long time.
Yeah, plus he's the smartest person, too.
Trust me, I'm like a smart person.
And honest.
And he's a great guy, and he's an honest guy.
Yeah. And then perform an experiment to see whether what you predict from your theory is true, and then publish that so other people can also try it.
Publish it? What, in the mainstream media?
Well, no, in an established scientific journal.
Oh, the fake news.
No, something like Nature. Although I'm not so sure Nature would be that.
Nature. Donald Trump and his offspring have been spraying bullets at Nature for a good long while. I don't think Nature thinks well of them.
Yeah, I think Nature may be overturned by someone like Trump and his wacky ideas. Because really, it does seem to me that there's far too much power in one particular person with him. I think
the thing with Donald Trump is that everything that we know about him is not what it is. That's not actually what's happening. This giant smokescreen, this distraction engine that is Donald Trump, is hiding what's actually going on behind the scenes, which is a catalogue of infamy. It's ripping up climate accords. It's allowing coal mines. It's allowing basically everybody that donated to his fund to become president is just getting a payback. He's acting like a third world dictator, and he's getting away with it. It's amazing. And he's getting away with it because everybody's concentrating on the latest incredible jaw-dropping thing that he throws out the window like a bone to a pack of dogs.
Well, the sooner the people get in power, and we can get rid of them, that despotic.
The people?
The people, yeah. Surely, Nick, you must agree that the people gathered together must... No?
No. Oh, come on it, Tony. You've met people. People shouldn't be allowed out of the house without adult supervision.
No, that's not true. No, that's not true. All right, get off that then, Nick. Can I ask you a personal question?
No.
No. Not ever.
Well, go on then. You're going to ask me if I've got a new book out?
No. Oh, have you?
Well, thanks very much. Yes, I do. Thanks for asking.
All right.
Yeah, it's called, it's got a bright orange cover, and it's available in paperback and e-book form from Amazon. And it's called now I have to remember this correctly, it's called My Tremendous Year in the Huge Shadow of Donald Trump's Awesome Orange Bigliness.
Oh, right, yeah. Oh, pretty good.
It's available at an internet near you.
Yeah. It sounds a good title anyway, Nick.
I tell you what, it's...
Now you've got to write it.
Every home. No, I have written it. It's up there. It's available.
Oh. And yet you couldn't remember the title.
Well, it's a long title. No, it's My Tremendous Year in the Huge Shadow of Donald Trump's Awesome Orange Bigliness. That's the correct title.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I shall look for that. Yeah. So what I was going to ask you,
yes,
and I hope for a truthful and honest reply, is why do you do it?
It?
Yeah.
It?
What you're doing.
Why do I do this?
Yeah.
Well, I don't have any other skills.
Really?
This is all I've got.
You've done bar work. You said you did bar work.
Oh, well, there's no skill involved to that. Plus, you stand up in a bar for 6 hours and all the blood rushes to your feet and you can't get your shoes off. It's just terrible. Yeah. Oh, I hated it. I used to have to go home after a shift at the bar and lie on a bed with my feet up in a vertical position, or just to let the blood drain out of them. It was terrible.
I've known a good few barmen and barmaids, but no.
I bet you have.
Well, not biblically.
Oh, I see. Right.
Although I was thinking about it with one particular.
Don't do it.
Landlady. No, I didn't. She's married.
Well, I am shocked.
Disgusting.
Married, you say?
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
How very modern of you.
How very what? Modern.
Modern.
Right,
yeah.
Yeah.
No, don't stray with the owners of the publican's wife in a place that you want to go and drink at again. That would be a huge mistake.
She was the publican.
Well, like I said, even worse.
Right. Yeah, well, no, actually, in my mind, it was pretty good. Back to the bridge then, Nick. Yeah?
Oh, back to the bridge. Right, so that's my cue, is it? Right, okay, well, leave it with me. Richard messages, a channel bridge will be billions over budget and take decades to construct. One can only wonder which comic books Johnson and Macron's nanny gave them to read. Well, I don't think Macron's got anything to do with it. I think it was Bozo of the FO who came up with this wizard scheme, which is just daft for the reasons that I will elucidate, to use a word that he would probably pull out of the air, in just some moments. So silly Boris.
Yeah. Wait a minute.
And Mike says Boris's bridge is just simply another publicity stunt to try and outshine Theresa May. Which is not that hard, let's be honest. Oh, poor Theresa. Mike says he's done this so many times, completely balmy and wholly impractical. Precisely right, but for the reason that not many people have mentioned, or no one, as far as I can tell. Just me. Once again, I saved the day. But first, let me just take this call in Wanstead. Sophie.
Hi, Nick. How are you?
Hey up, Chuck. I'm super. Thanks for asking.
I really missed listening to you for the last 8 days. I'm back to civilization now.
Well, where have you been?
That farm trip to Devon.
Oh, Devon. Well, that must have been a delight, apart from all the weather. You picked the wrong time to go to Devon, didn't you?
Actually, it was beautiful. There's no.
As I was saying, beautiful down there this time of year.
We were in the middle of nowhere. We had to walk. We had long walks. We were on the farm at 7:30 in the morning.
Well, 7:30, also known as lunchtime in farming, in the farming world.
Feeding the sheep, the cows.
Yeah.
Collecting eggs. Actually, I found out some really interesting facts. Now, do you remember?
Cows don't lay eggs.
Well, I'll tell you who does like eggs, which I didn't know. Rats. Apparently, rats steal the eggs from the chicken coop.
Yeah, I would think so.
And eat them. That's disgusting.
And then the foxes eat the rats.
The circle of life. But, you know, a few years ago, I told you that milk was pus and mucus. This is what I heard.
Oh, pus and mucus. It's the cornerstone to any nutritional breakfast.
Well, I found out something even more disgusting.
Milk is not pus and mucus. Why would you say that?
No, it is actually just really pus and mucus.
Oh, you know what I'm drinking right now?
A cup of tea with lots of milk.
Well, actually, I've got a coffee with milk and then a cup of chocolate Nesquik sitting right by it.
Sorry. But cows have 4 stomachs. And what they do is they chew the cud, they chew the grass, they chew silage, which I've just found out what silage is.
What is it?
But then
silage. Sounds like sewage. I don't like it.
No, it's grass that's been pickled. So you know when you're driving along the motorway.
As opposed to people who take grass who become pickled.
Want to score some pot?
That's not what we're talking about.
Very good. You know those piles and piles of tyres you see on the edge of motorways?
No.
On the side of... that's actually, they're weighing down the grass, so it ferments and pickles under the plastic sheet. And then cows eat the silage and produce better milk. But the cows have 4 stomachs. They eat the grass and hold on to your hat. They vomit the grass up.
Oh.
And then it goes into their other 2 stomachs.
You're not talking about larks, are you? Because that's how they feed their young. We're not talking about, like, cows don't vomit their food into their into calves. I'm pretty sure that I've never seen that on TV.
No, they vomit the food because we can't digest grass, so they vomit the food into their other 2 stomachs, their grass, sorry, and then it gets, it's palatable for humans, obviously. Not palatable for, sorry, it goes...
Well, it sounds like you learnt nothing at all on the farm in Devon.
Sorry.
0.
No, you know, I'm going to be stocking up on even more almond milk now.
Almond milk. Well, I tried all of those different kinds of milk, and they're all, what's a polite way of saying rubbish? I didn't like any of them. They're all just, they're all packed with sugar apart from anything else. It's just white sugar.
No, there are 2 brands that don't have any sugar, any salt, but there's only.
Yeah, what do they taste
almond.
of?
Lovely.
Nothing.
Lovely and creamy.
Yeah, rubbish. That's the thing with fat and salt. If you take fat and salt out, there's nothing left. There is no taste left.
Well, what it is our palates have become too used to eating junk.
Oh, I see. It's my fault.
And if you took that away for a while, the collective you, the palates would readjust.
Well, that's true to a certain extent. If you are the kind of person who wants 4 spoons of sugar in your tea, you can wean yourself off it. I mean, taking tea without sugar is disgusting straight away. But if you, if you force yourself to do it, after a while, it's just okay. It's not nice, really, but it's just all right. You can wean yourself off the good stuff. Yeah.
Well, tea.
I'm on about 3 sweet teas a day now, man. Oh, I can handle it.
Can I just tell you something else I've learnt? Gelatine.
Well, I don't think we've established that you've learnt anything yet. It's a complete waste of time going down on the farm.
The 4 stomachs story is absolutely true.
Mm-hmm.
They actually do eat the grass and
then they vomit it up. Yeah, as we've previously heard. Yeah, in excruciating detail.
Now, this should put the rascals, the children, off sweets. Gelatine is made from animals' hooves.
Yeah.
That's disgusting.
Well, presumably they only take it from the hooves when the animals have finished with them. I mean, they don't take it from the animals' hooves while they're still using them. So, what's the big to-do? But thanks for really grossing us out, Sophie. I've decided not to eat anything ever again, particularly milk. Vomit it up, you say?
Oh, hi, Nick. I just rang up about a caller you had on about 3 calls ago, which you've probably forgotten about now. So.
Yes. I don't listen to this show.
No, I know you don't. But, you were saying something about
my new book.
Your wonderful new book, yes. Yeah. No, about the Democrats in America not being quite as underhand and dirty as the Republicans, and being that you said the left are too nice. Too nice,
exactly.
And the lady said, although I think they're being a bit not nice tonight, aren't they, over the
no, the reverse is true. They're being nice. It's an over abundance of niceness might shut the government down, because the Republicans are being mean and nasty and vicious and cruel. They're trying to chuck all those kids out that were brought there to America by their parents. These people have, we're talking about, all right, many of them aren't children anymore, but they were brought as children. They've only ever known America, and Donald Trump wants to chuck them out because, I don't know, they're not white. They don't play golf. I've got no idea.
Yes, no, I agree. They are being nice in that way, but they're not. They're trying to frustrate the budget or whatever it is at the moment.
Yeah, but for that reason, because
I know.
That's the reason that they're trying to do it, in order to protect these kids.
Yes. Yeah, no, they're being not nice in order to be nice.
Yes.
Yes, yeah. No, I've got an echo on this phone.
You've got an echo,
yeah. But no, what I rang about is that she said, well, you're wrong about that. She said the left aren't nice. Yeah. And then you said, well, who in particular? And she said,
name names.
John McDonnell.
Yes.
But she didn't really seem to be able to say anything particularly about John McDonnell, why he wasn't nice.
That doesn't make it not true, Annie. If you say it out loud, it instantly becomes a fact these days.
Yes, it does. And also, I mean, John McDonnell and Jeremy Corbyn have both had the most appalling amount of all sorts tipped all over them by the print press in particular.
It's amazing that they're still in politics. Never mind about doing so well. It's incredible. I've never known anybody get worse press than Jeremy Corbyn, and I suspect that the reason is money. The offshore tax efficient media barons are having a major cow at the very thought of not being able to be as tax efficient as they are at the moment, because that's what Jeremy Corbyn is, it's like right at the top of his to-do list, along with the massive number of titles that are in the hands of very few newspaper proprietors.
Yes, absolutely. I think he is a big threat
and
to
them. That informs, I think, the reason the attitude of the press to Uncle Jezza.
Oh, definitely. And because they just don't like left-wing people generally, the policies they wouldn't like, they wouldn't.
Well, if you were a billionaire, Annie, you wouldn't like them either.
No, I definitely wouldn't like him if I was a billionaire.
Because the thing with being a billionaire is I'm sure that there's no such thing as enough. I mean, maybe Bill Gates wouldn't know what to do with any more money, but there's not many people who would be in that category. And if you get a tax bill, for instance, say it was 10%. I mean, wouldn't that be fantastic if our tax bills were 10% as opposed to about, all in, it's about 50% now for us poor dopes that pay taxes. But it's not the amount that's levied on you, it's the amount that percentage represents in money. Because 10% to us would be great. Who wouldn't want to pay only 10% of tax? But if it's 10% of £10 million, say you got £10 million a year and you had to pay 10%, you'd be writing a cheque for £1 million. No wonder they're all banking on, offshore on a moon that's I can't think what the word is. It's going around Saturn. What's that word?
Yeah,
orbiting.
Yeah. No, I think greed is a form of mental illness. Once you've got a lot of money, you just can't stop. It's like an addiction, isn't it? For a lot of them.
Well, I suppose so, but it's a mental.
You spend all that in one lifetime.
You couldn't. No, but it's a mental illness that has got the human race to its current preeminent position on Earth. We are number one, not in spite of being nasty and greedy and vicious and aggressive, but because we're nasty and greedy and vicious and aggressive.
Yes. Oh, yes.
I don't think we're very nice people.
No, we're not. And I tell you who isn't a nice person.
Who?
Talking about politicians, and it has struck horror and fear and loathing into all disabled people, in fact, anybody on benefits, is the appointment of Esther McVey to be Minister for the DWP. Because Esther McVey was a junior minister in the DWP between 2013 and 2015, and she... every time I used to hear her on the radio, I used to want to throw the radio out of the window. She said the most appalling things, that people that use food banks, they're all feckless and they just don't know how to budget properly. And disabled people and people who are ill, they're all just malingerers, and really they just need to go kick up the backside and getting back to work. And she really is awful. In fact, she's so awful that...
well, don't sit on the fence, Annie. Tell me what you think.
I am. The people of Wirral West actually told her what they thought of her, because in 2015 she lost her seat.
Oh.
But the Tories put her in one of the most safe seats in the country, definitely, which was George Osborne's former seat in Tatton, which I know very well because I was born 10 miles from there and brought up round there. So they would vote for a chimpanzee in a...
Well, they voted for George Osborne.
Well, exactly. But George Osborne is more their type. Esther McVey isn't. But they would just vote for anybody who was a Tory. And she will be in there now, well, for as long as she likes, really, until she retires. They will never vote anybody else other than Tory. I don't think there ever has been. I'm 62, and I can't ever remember there being a Labour MP in Knutsford, because it's a town, is Knutsford. It's a very upmarket little town that's, commutable to Manchester from, and you will never get anybody other than a Tory. So, the Tory party definitely wanted her back in because she's just their sort.
What seems odd to me is that I know as a nation, we're turning our back on Europe while pretending that we're not turning our back on Europe, but we seem to be embracing everything that the Tangerine Scream in the White House is doing. We seem to be putting people in positions of authority in places where they seem to be uniquely unqualified to be. It's almost as though it's a game. How far can I push this before somebody intervenes? Boris Johnson is our chief diplomat. Do I need to say any more?
Well, yeah, what about Jeremy Hunt? I mean, Jeremy Hunt, who, health minister, who wrote, co-wrote a book on privatising the health services, like putting,
well, exactly.
I don't know, Dracula in charge of a blood bank. Who would be more suitable to run the health service? Somebody who actually doesn't believe in it.
To run the health service down.
To the ground, yes. That's exactly what he's doing. I think that's what they're up to. That's why they put him in there. That's why he's still, although she did try and get rid of him, didn't she, this time?
Well, really so we're led to believe, although we don't really know, do we?
We don't really know. But I think the thing is he's so unpopular with the actual people who work in the NHS. When my partner went down to London on that big Save Our NHS demo last year, where there's 200,000 people, which the media almost ignored, there was loads of great homemade placards, and there was one by a group of midwives, a whole bunch of midwives there, and the funniest one he said that he saw all day, which was a reference to Jeremy Hunt, said, what was it? Midwives know an asterisk UNT when they see one.
Okay, I think you almost got away with that one.
I thought that was priceless, actually.
Yeah, Jeremy Hunt. Exactly.
Yes, their favourite person.
Yeah, but, we could get into a whole discussion about why the NHS is going to fail in its current model, because we're the only country in the world, as far as I know, that organises our health affairs in that manner, and that other countries have much better results than we do by following a different model that is also, more or less free at the point of use. I mean, the people in Norway don't seem to be in want of good, health provisions, and you could say the same of Spain and France and Germany and Luxembourg and Switzerland and everywhere else that you can think of, except America, which and again we seem to be. I don't know. I just get the feeling that we seem to be entranced with what America does, but then the Conservative Party and the Republican Party are hand in hand, helping each other down a ramp.
They are a bit similar, and I think as far as the amount of money we spend on the NHS, it's a lot less than countries like Norway.
Yeah.
Most of the other European countries spend a lot more money per head, person than we do.
And they got more doctors and more beds and better outcomes, and people live longer and they're happier.
Yeah, but that's not because there's anything wrong with the NHS. It's because our government will not spend it on the NHS. They've just given the bank lot, bankers, a £4 billion cut to the bank levy, when the head of NHS England, during the budget, the head of NHS England was asking for $4 billion for the NHS, which he didn't get. He got about half that. So, chucking $4 billion as
well, we seem to. Our priorities are all up the spout. I mean, we've got an unlimited amount of money for weapons of mass destruction. The most destructive weapon that has ever been invented. We're so in love with it that we'll break the bank. Literally, there's no amount of money that is too much to pay for us to be able to strut about the world stage, giving it the big I am, because we've got nuclear weapons. I can't think of any other reason why we've got them. What's the point? Well, never going to use them. And people, I read something in the papers today saying, oh, well, thank goodness that we've got our weapons, because that's what's really putting the wind up Vlad the Insaner. That's the only reason that's preventing him from staging an all-out attack. But that's not what Vladimir Putin's going to do. I mean, if he did actually want to damage this country, then he'd do exactly what, I can't remember who it was, but some Vice Lord Admiral such and such was saying that, they've got robots that can go down and cut the cables that bring the internet to us.
Yeah,
and you can't react to that by launching nuclear weapons, because, first of all, we'd have no proof that it was actually the Russians anyway.
Well, no, and also I heard something very alarming the other day. about nuclear weapons. Apparently, the software for all our nuclear weapons system is
Windows 98.
Was it you that said this, or somebody else on the radio?
Yeah, I was talking about this. Yeah.
Yes, really clapped out and ancient, and could easily be hacked. Well, how alarming is that? We're better off without them.
Yeah, exactly.
Safer, a lot safer.
Very much so. Yeah. We'll just add that to the list of curiosities that have bled from 2017 into 2018. So far, I'm not that impressed. How about you?
No,
not really. No. The insidious nature of the European Union, the socialist European experiment, because Monsieur Macron came over here and gave it to Mrs. M straight. He said, the choice is on the British side, not on my side. And he said this in English. He says, there can be no differentiated. Wow. He does speak English better than what I do. There can be no differentiated access to the financial services. That's what he said. And, as we've previously discussed, that's what we're slaves to, sadly. That's another thing to thank Margaret Thatcher for. Or, like I said, as we used to say, Margaret Thatcher. He said, so we're stuck with them. And it's almost as though they've got us bent over the desk and are thwacking us. Thank you, sir. May I have another? Macron, the leader of France, said, if you want access to the single market, including the financial services, be my guest. He's being sarcastic now. He says, but it means you need to contribute to the budget and acknowledge the European jurisdiction. Those are the rules. That's what he said. And the rules must be obeyed. So we need to pay up. We need to pay and a pay and a pay. Exactly. And the PM said, she had her fingers in her ears and said, I'm not listening. Just keep saying the same thing over and over and over again. We have a deep and special partnership, and our partnership is deep and special. which means we hate you, we're leaving, we love you, we're not going. I've got no idea what's going on. Hey, did the party actually come up with these impact assessments that were demanded a couple of weeks ago? No, we still got no idea. We're whistling in the dark, like Andy Williams. Anybody remember that? Andy Williams, Whistling in the Dark.
Rock and roll!
Home-loving man on the other side. I think that was the first single I ever got. And I stand by that. It's an excellent record. This is a couple of weeks ago now. The Labour's leader at the European Parliament has written to David Davis, so great they named him twice, demanding the regional Brexit impact assessments. In other words, what Brexit's going to do to the economy. You'd think that they'd have done that already. Richard Corbett, MEP, called on David Davis, the Brexit Secretary, to take action after what he described as the fiasco of the inadequate sectoral impact assessments, which is a lot of syllables, which I think amount to, does anybody have any idea what's going on here? And David Davis said, the inadequate sectoral impact assessments. Yeah, I left them on the bus. Or I accidentally put them in the wash. Or the dog ate them. Richard Corbett, MEP, criticised the government's approach. That word approach implies that there is some sort of wherewithal about it, that there is actually a plan. I thought they were just making it up as they went along. He said there's still no explanation of what Brexit would look like, and that the decisions that are being taken without that awareness of the consequences means that it's all a fiasco. In other words, absolutely nobody has any idea what they're doing.
Oh, no.
They haven't come up with one yet, have they? The stuff that's going on is just staggering. In fact, it seems to be so inept, I am almost prepared to believe that the government, despite its loud protestations to the contrary, have actually no intention of us leaving the European Union. They just want to make you think that that's what's going to happen. Because what kind of an organisation that's running a blooming country wouldn't look into what the impacts of their decisions are going to be? This isn't America. You can't just say whatever flits across your tiny orange mind. This is a proper country, crying out loud. So anyway, this is Richard Corbett, MEP, who's trying to save us. And, we do appreciate it.
Thank you.
He said, we insist on the need for full and comprehensive regional impact assessments. In other words, what the Brexit might do to each and every part of this beautiful country of ours. He says, our constituents need to know the government is considering the impact of Brexit on their local area and taking this into account in its negotiations, as Mrs M would say. God, if I never hear that word again, it'll be too soon. She should just loosen up a bit. I mean, you don't have to pronounce every syllable and emphasise the S's. Just relax. Does she seem relaxed?
No.
Not really. Not really, no. Poor Mrs M. She can't be enjoying this. Why is she still doing it? You could back out now and maintain face. Nobody would think the worse of you for it. Anyway, this bloke was trying to save us from our leaders' ineptitude. He says that we insist on the need for a comprehensive regional impact assessment. Our constituents need to know that the government is considering the impact of Brexit on their local area. Well, do they? Because the constituents didn't consider the impact of Brexit on their local area. Most of the places that voted out are going to be significantly impacted negatively by that decision. London isn't going to be that much put out. Millionaires who are in, or not even millionaires, I mean, the relatively well-off in London aren't going to be as impacted negatively as the people who are already poor. The rich will continue to be rich, and the poor will get poorer in all likelihood. So maybe we don't need a comprehensive regional impact assessment because none of us actually thought about any of that before we voted. It's a bit late now. But you would think that a government would do that, because that's their job. Or we could just take a leap in the dark and hope that everything is super and great and tremendous and huge. The Mayor of London's commissioned studies to look into the effects of Brexit on the capital. The Scottish Government's already published their report on the economic impact of Britain leaving the EU. The results of their report, by the way, were pretty much. Leaving the European Union is projected to cost the Scottish economy £11 billion a year. Which sounds like a lot. Mr. Corbett says it cannot be right that some parts of the country have impact assessments and others do not. Well, it don't make no difference whether they do or not. The whole thing could be flagging up huge red warning symbols.
Warning!
And they'd still have to go and do it anyway because of you-know-who. Mentioning no names. Rory Palmer, Labour MEP for the East Midlands, said people have the right to know about the impact of Brexit and what it will mean for their livelihood. Well, wouldn't it have been nice if we'd actually had that information before we went to vote? Instead of some old flannel put on the side of a bus by some dodgy charlatans using iffy Russian money. Unless I'm getting any of this wrong, in which case you must correct me. And as for Boris's bridge, well, I haven't even got to that yet. We haven't crossed that Rubicon yet. But it's a blooming silly idea for a reason that nobody's mentioned yet. Mr. A says this one, they drive sur le droit and we drive sur le gauche. Well, okay. What's that got to do with anything? You're just trying to impress me with your vast knowledge of French. Well, I'm not impressed. Roger says, bridge over the channel. Boris has lost his mind. Yeah, I think Boris Johnson is quite clearly out of his mind.
I think Donald Trump is clearly out of his mind.
Yeah, he says, has he not been on the M25? If you get a breeze over 10 mile an hour, the Dartford crossing's shut. Build a bridge over the sea, and it would be open one day a year in June. And even then, only in a heat wave, says Roger. Yeah, but not in a heat wave, though, Roger, because that will buckle the tarmac. He hasn't thought this. Well, he hasn't thought it through at all. He just said the first thing that occurred to him at the time, which he thought might get him positive points for the people he was speaking to. He's very much like Donald Trump in that regard. Oh, you can hear me tapping this thing. It's so slow. Touchscreen technology will never take off. Trust me. Woolwich. Hello, Barry.
Hello there.
Hello there.
Touchscreen. I used a touchscreen photo printer today.
Oh, yeah.
And it cut me. It was in the shop.
It cut you?
It cut me. The screen was cracked. It was stupid things.
Wow. You could sue for millions, Barry.
I considered it enough.
Do you need your fingers for your work?
Yes.
Well, there you go.
Yes. I don't play guitar, but I do need my fingers, and I know.
I think the reason that this touchscreen doesn't work is because it has about as much dirt as a butcher's floor on it. It is filthy. No one's ever cleaned it.
Don't you bring a wet wipe in? You should.
I do. The problem is, once you've started your show, then because you have to switch the screen off. But even in the off position, if you wipe it, all of the things on the screen just go all over the place. It's like shaking up an Etch-a-Sketch. You remember those things? It just disappears everything. So I'm loath to do it while I'm actually on the air because I might just cut myself off the air. So I'm just stuck with it, just stabbing and stabbing and stabbing, hoping that eventually it'll work. But you know me, I never complain. Oh, I just did it again. You know me, I never complain.
Stop whining.
There you go.
There we go. You need touchscreen gloves, that's what you need. That's a little fancy thing. Boris. Oh, his dead cat that he's thrown on the table. Oh, my word. This guy, I mean, we like mediocrity, it appears, right? Because we've seen Boris come up with so many infrastructure ideas, and none of them have worked. He's come up with his cable car.
Oh, the cable car. Yeah, there's, I think, 12 people. The last time I counted, okay, this is a little while ago, but the last time I looked it up, there were 12 regular users at a cost of only £60 million.
Yeah, right.
I bet if I went out in the street with a clipboard and offered people £1 million, they wouldn't be able to come up with that crossing over the river. I'd ask them, how many crossings over the River Thames can you think of? I bet not one single person would remember that that's there.
They wouldn't even know where it is. It's just such a pointless thing. I've been on it.
Well, I'll tell you where it is, Barry. It's nowhere. It goes from nowhere to nowhere.
To nowhere. I went on it 3 times of a school trip with my kids.
I went up it once, and that was enough for me. You ain't getting me up on that thing again. It was alarming.
It's petrifying.
It is really scary.
Now, can you imagine doing that over the channel?
Well, I tell you what, could you imagine doing that as your commute? Like, first thing in the morning, having to get hoiked up into the air on that thing while you're trying to digest your breakfast.
It doesn't make sense. Do you know what I was going to say? It's funny you mentioned the impact reports that we should really have.
Yes.
Because if we don't know the impact of Brexit, how do we know whether or not we need to spend £120 billion on a bridge, or probably 200 or whatever it's going to cost, on a bridge to France? We have no idea whether we're going to need so much haulage capacity. We don't know what the impacts are. We've got 2 crossings anyway.
Well, if we're gonna bow out of the single market and we're going to do all of our trade with I don't know, New Zealand or somewhere like that, then yes, we won't need it. It'll be a gigantic white elephant.
He's going to come up with next.
Please speak directly into the phone, Barry.
I do apologise. It's his new phone. Yeah, Boris is going to say we need a bridge to New Zealand next. I think that's probably the only solution. I mean, my daughter said it. She said, well, hold on a second. If we're leaving the EU, why do we want to build connections over to the EU?
It seems like they're sort of caught in the headlights, and they want to make it appear to inveterate Brexiteer ultras that we are definitely, totally, and completely leaving the EU. But on the other hand, there's the other half of the country doesn't like that idea, and so they want to they're burning bridges and building them at the same time.
I think he's taking a leaf out of James Brown. He's taking it to the bridge. Every time something goes wrong, he takes it to a bridge. And it's just his only idea. He'll take it to the bridge. And then he just comes up with some baloney.
Well, to be fair to Boris Johnson, and I can't believe I'm about to say this, a lot of the ideas that he had when he was the mayor of London, I actually agreed with. I like the idea of the Garden Bridge. I thought that would be an excellent idea. Not as a bridge, not that the Thames needs another bridge in that location, but it's not. But it wasn't a means from getting from one bank to the other. It was a destination in itself. And, the fifth richest economy in the world should be able to provide for, some amusements for tourists and locals alike. Why not? I like the idea of that. Of course, his idea of closing down Heathrow and siting London's airport in the estuary was an excellent idea. But, people complaining about the wildlife. Oh, please, who cares? we get through 1 billion animals a year in this country, slaughtered for dinner. We're not remotely interested in animals unless we can imbue them with the human characteristics.
I think the more wildlife we eat, probably for the better. But,
Barry, this is a terrible phone. You need to get yourself a better phone.
It's a new phone. Can you imagine?
I can imagine. Dreadful.
I know. It's
awful.
Poor. It's poor. But this Donald Trump as well. His IQ test. What in the
It wasn't an IQ test. That was not an IQ test.
Competency. Can you identify a lion? If we accept this as this means our leaders are competent.
Yeah.
So we are accepting such mediocrity.
Mm-hmm.
We get everything that we deserve. How do we deserve it?
I suppose so. Yeah. It's our fault.
Well, look, this week they voted through the EU withdrawal bill, and they've given the executive powers. The Tories pretty much voted for themselves to have as much power as they possibly want. And I argued with people on Twitter, and they're like, "Well, we voted for leave." Well, but what are the details?
Okay, the part where you have fallen, where your whole argument falls down, Barry, is the part where you argued with people on Twitter. Stop doing that.
That's why I
just put the Twitter down and walk away.
I did. After that, I sighed, a deep sigh.
Right.
I put it down and I said, you know what? There is no talking to people. There's no point in a second referendum. None of it
just
matters.
Stop tweeting. Trust me.
It's gone like it's so religious. It doesn't matter. Leave is all that matters. So none of the details matter. So it doesn't matter whether we get a trade deal.
I think religious is about right. There is a religious fervour about this, and I think it's also, my lottery analogy is also correct. People seem to believe that this is the key to improving their lives somehow. Some magic dust is going to be sprinkled on them, and they're going to start living the lives of the people in the magazines. Well, it ain't going to happen. The rich will continue to be rich, and the poor will continue to be poor. You ain't going to notice the difference, other than you won't be able to afford as much as you used to in shops.
You're wrong. The rich will be richer.
Well, yeah.
Yes, that's exactly. The rich will be richer and the poor will be marginalised.
Yeah.
But so be it. This is Brexit Britain.
All right. Okay. Thanks a lot, Barry. Not that we're depressed about it or anything. Yeah, Donald Trump passed an IQ test.
Trust me, I'm like a smart person.
And his doctor said, "Oh, well, right you are," and they ticked the relevant box. Well, apparently, we didn't get the news because the doors went into lockdown.
Warning!
We have like an intruder or something. Well, we don't, but because all the doors are magnets. Yeah, I don't know what you're thinking. What's a magnet when it's at home? I don't know. It's science. Get what's his name on the phone, and he'll explain it to us. The fella. What's it? Him. I can't remember what his name is. Anyway, get a scientist. Wake him up. But yeah, and if there's, you see, life used to be so much more simple when there wasn't all this newfangled magnet technology. When doors used to close with a lock. You remember locks, don't you? Yeah, well, these days it's all about the magnets, baby. And if there's an electronic short, then the magnets don't open. And you try opening one of these doors, it's like they're as huge as the blast doors on a nuclear fallout shelter. You can still hear people on the other side, as clear as day. They make absolutely no difference as far as sound deadening goes, but it does make it impossible to open if there's an electronic short. So apparently that was it. She must have been freaking out, Zora Solomon, our newsreader. Couldn't get into a little booth. Oh. But anyway, there will be news at 12:30. Don't you worry about that. Much of it bad, I expect. But that's the nature of the news. Gareth says, please let's not go back to being self-sufficient. I can't live without avocado. Oh, this is a conversation we were having ages ago about how we will. This country cannot possibly be self-sufficient in the production of its food. It's impossible. Cannot be done. Partly because we will need much of the land that is currently being used for farming in one way or another for housing. But mostly because kids don't want to do farming. The people who farm are looking at collecting their pension soon. Their average age is 60 years old for farming. Congratulations, you made it. But there's no kids coming up, or precious few. So we will, and you know that this is true from the food that you get in your supermarket. You try and buy an English apple, I double dare you. They're all blooming French, because they come over here with their juicy tastiness. Richmond, hello, Rajiv.
Hello, sir, Mr. Nick Abbott.
Yes,
Good
sir.
evening to you.
It's the shouty member from Richmond. Starts quiet, gets louder.
I will not do so.
I bet you will.
No, I am actually. I'm actually.
Calm.
I'm actually learning. I'm learning how to speak on the phone.
Oh, right. Then. Well, let's see how we go.
Yes. You know, Mr. Abbott, I just want to say that this is a country that went everywhere in the world. Everywhere, even including my country, which is India. And this is a country that voted Brexit. Now, you know, what a shameful thing to do, actually, to think about it. This is
what, to vote Brexit?
Yeah, this is a country that voted out of Europe. This is the only country in the world that does not celebrate Independence Day. This is the only country in the world.
Independence Day?
No, England never celebrates Independence Day.
Independence from whom?
Every other country, America, India, Australia, Canada, they celebrate Independence Day.
Well, it's independence from us.
Absolutely, yeah, from the chains.
Yes.
This is a country, it's a laughable stock actually for us guys in India, that this is a country that voted out of Brexit. They don't even want to be close to their own neighbors. You know, this is what they voted for Brexit. What for? These guys now are on a small little island, right? And they don't even want to be with their close neighbors. I mean, this is a really, really shameful.
But this is not unusual. Nobody likes their neighbours. All countries have their common default jokes are about their neighbours usually.
Right.
I mean, our default jokes are about the Irish, and I'm sure that and in other countries the default joke will be about the opposite end of the compass. You know, the North will joke about the South, and vice versa. Everybody hates their neighbours. That's not just us.
But you know, Nick, I just feel that I think you know England was leading in financial terms, in business terms. It was doing so good before this Brexit result. I mean, people, actually, this country is going to lose very, very heavily in financial terms.
Well, we already have. We already have. The pound's tanked. That's why, for a brief period there, the tourists were pouring over here, and clogging up the place, asking where is Madame Two Swords. That's because this was a cheap thought of as a cheap destination. That seems to have dried up a bit now, and the top end stores aren't receiving the same kind of high spending tourist numbers as they used to. But that doesn't help the people who live here, because everything has become more expensive for us, but cheaper for them.
Yes, but actually, I just sometimes feel that what harm was it that everybody was united in the Europe and everybody can freely work and and go and live in different parts of Europe as and when you want it, and then you get the guys like from Scotland. They go to America and they become president of America and they become racist. You see what I mean? I mean, what is happening?
I have no idea what you're talking about now.
Racism is really, you get guy from Scotland.
Yeah.
I mean, I call that guy. If I had a bar in Scotland, I know some people in Scotland. Somewhere in Glasgow, and then this guy drinks all night, and then you kick his ass out. Somebody who's got orange hair, and you say, what's your name? And he says, oh, my name is Donald Trump. He says, well, get the bloody ass out of my bar.
Right, you're making absolutely no sense now, Rajiv. But at least you're saying these nonsensical things with a lot of emotion, and I appreciate the emotion. You want to kick him out of a bar?
I'd like to punch him in the face.
Yeah, good luck with that. Thanks a lot, Rajiv. I have no idea what that call was about. But at least he wasn't shouting. I got the feeling that he was going to start shouting any moment. I think I saved us just in time. I still haven't got to the part where about why Boris can't have his blooming bridge. He should think more. Just a little bit would be nice before he speaks. Just a smidge. Please, Boris, we're begging you. You represent this country. You're our chief diplomat. Can you believe that?
No.
David?
Yeah, I'm going to start a number 10 petition.
Yes.
That we don't have the Channel Bridge built.
A petition?
Yeah.
On the number 10 website, right.
Yeah, I've just got to get a few people to sign it for me.
I don't know what the point is of those petitions, because they never pay the blindest bit of attention to them.
They don't, but my friend Oliver got his debated about a second EU referendum, so I thought, I wonder if I'll beat him. I don't think I'll get 17 million signatures somehow.
No.
Anyway, I'll put on the petition. I don't think it meets the guidelines. I'll put it's a waste of money, it's a waste of time, and they should stop the bridge at the end of Boris's tongue, so I don't think they'll put that up somehow. And they might do.
Right, well, the best of luck with that, Dave. This message says, why do Brexiteers always talk about the past and a bygone golden age that never existed? Because that's, this bygone golden age that never existed is when they used to have, when their knees used to work and their hips weren't sore. And they used to engage in hot interpersonal relations with each other.
Disgusting.
That's the golden age that we're talking about. Everybody, when they were young. Ian says, won't a Channel Bridge make it easier for the European army to invade us? Well, news about that, by the way. Because Monsieur Macron and Theresa May were talking about just this very thing. Wait a minute, I have detailed files. Yeah, this is going to make certain people's brains boil. The Maybot said that a joint British-French force will be able to deploy 10,000 troops at short notice and to confront any threat by 2020. This is after intense discussions with the French. I didn't know we had 10,000 troops. I suppose we'll put up half of them. Or maybe we'll supply those excellent Land Rovers. The military cooperation is intended to be a clear signal of continued close ties between the UK and France after Brexit. 10,000 troops, a joint British-French force, which sounds like a European army to me. I bet that a certain individual spat out his breakfast beer when he heard that.
I'm a nutcase.
So, yeah, be careful what you wish for. But I think this impact assessment thing, we haven't actually got to the bottom of this, because it seems bizarre that a government that is engaged in taking us along a certain route has absolutely no idea what the end of that route looks like. Not a clue as to what lies at the end of the road we're on. And they don't even seem to be keen to find out, which does make me suspicious. Either that they have no intention of going down this route, they're just saying that they're going to go down it, that we won't actually leave the EU, they'll just wangle away to make it appear as though we have. Therefore, you don't need a Brexit assessment because we're not going to actually leave. Or they're totally, completely and utterly inept. You decide. So we've got Rory Palmer, he's the Labour MEP for the East Midlands, and he said that people had the right to know about the impact of Brexit and what it will mean for their livelihood. But half of the people, and I talk to them on a regular basis, they said, we don't want to know what the impact of Brexit will be for our livelihood. We don't care if we do die. This Rory Palmer, Labour MEP for the East Midlands, said the government is taking decisions about Brexit without assessing its impact on my constituency of the East Midlands or anywhere. Exactly. But apart from that, how are they doing?
Oh, fabulous.
Yeah. He said the bottom line is we need to know what will happen to us outside the EU. It's amazing that we have got no idea. Or the government does have an idea, but it's so bad they just don't want to tell us. I'd have to hope that it's the latter. That they, of course, they have spent, they've put people with brains the size of planets on this very issue in order to find out what decisions they are making on our behalf are going to affect us, how they're going to affect us. I mean, that would be the minimum that you would expect of a government running a country, wouldn't you? So maybe that's it. Maybe they have done it, that they're not utterly incompetent, they're just embarrassed at the result. They just don't want to tell us, because we might get upset and cross. Might want to change our minds. And then it would, of course, the will of the people would have changed. It's now more than 1.5 years since the referendum and 10 months since the triggering of Article 50. The government cannot allow the chaos, says this Labour MEP, this chaos, uncertainty and confusion around Brexit to continue. And that makes it sound like a coalition of chaos. A coalition of chaos, uncertainty and confusion. Yeah, that sounds about right. Nailed it. He said, people and businesses in every part of our country, in every region, in every community need to know that the government is making decisions on the future with them in mind. Independent research that's looked into the effects of Brexit on regions across the UK found that the South West had the largest share of their income, the local gross domestic product, exposed to Britain leaving the European Union, the South West. They're going to be negatively impacted the most. 13.7% of the aggregate economy in the South West is going to be affected by Brexit. And not far behind, the West Midlands and the North West. And these are the areas that were persuaded to vote out the most. Isn't that curious? How strange. The places that are going to be most negatively affected by Brexit are the ones that were most keen to leave the EU. How weird. I think that they were persuaded to do something that was against their own interest by oily carnival barkers using dodgy Russian money. They've literally been pushed into voting against their own best interests. Give them a gun, and the first thing that they do is shoot their feet off. I mean, of all the regions in the country, Cumbria was worst affected. 16.3% of their economy under threat once Brexit's finalised. But the good people of Cumbria just closed their eyes and jumped off the pavement to run across the road, metaphorically speaking. I mean, if you did that, it might go well, but it's quite likely to go badly. But, you know, they made up their minds and they're sticking to it, regardless of what happens. Now, assuming that we've managed to prise the doors open, I'll try this again. Billy says, Donald Trump reminds me of that kid at school who chucks paper aeroplanes from the back of the classroom because that's the only way he can get attention. Dave says, get Boris to commission Carillion to build the bridge. That should work out well. Baz says, can you tell me where you find this Condoleezza Rice you keep going on about? I've just tried to order some from Tesco, but all I can find is Uncle Ben's, and I don't think he's going to be of any help. Uncle Ben's?
And I like him. He's a good man. He is not a racist. I can tell you that. He's a good person.
Yeah, he likes him, even though he's not a racist. Jim says, I've got a 1-watt bulb Boris can borrow if he wants to outshine Theresa May. And this says, please say why the bridge won't work. Too much suspense. Well, I suspect that this next caller may have his finger on the pulse of. That doesn't make any sense. He may have a clue as to why it won't work. Let's find out, shall we? Langley, hello, Dion.
Hello, Nick. Yeah, yeah. I'm still smiling. It's something to do with James O'Brien and Led Zeppelin. Go on.
Something to do with James O'Brien and Led Zeppelin.
Yeah, he had a caller on this morning who said he unwinds to Led Zeppelin. And
James O'Brien unwinds to him, or the caller?
The caller did, yeah.
Oh, well, which Led Zeppelin? Because some of it is unwindable too. Like Bronner Hour, for instance, you could unwind to that.
Yeah, he did do with, I don't know, James and Led Stress. But it's funny, James come up with, because he's from Kidderminster, in the Midlands. He said I was going down the road with my mum in her car, and she stopped the car because his mum had a dress agency, and there was this really tall, fantastic-looking woman, and his mum wanted to sign her for a dress agency. So this bloke said, "Who was he? Don't tell me, Robert Plant." I said, "No, it was John Bonham's mum." And I thought, oh my God, you know, and I don't know, he's just been tickling me all day, you know.
Well, you get your pleasure where you can, don't you, Dion?
Well, maybe, you know, like James didn't say how old he was at the time, so it doesn't matter. Anyway, yeah, this bridge.
Yes.
Obviously hasn't thought it through. I mean, from what I gather, the Channel, is it the busiest shipping lane, or one of them in the world?
I do believe we have a winner. Exactly.
I know that. Oh, I didn't know it was a competition.
Well, it wasn't up to this point, but you've won a major prize. Major prize not available.
That's good. I'll fed up with prizes. But yeah, I mean, what are they going to do? Stop all the ships for a little bit while they build a bit?
Correct, Amundo. The unlikeliest source has come up with the correct answer, Dion, and I mean that in the nicest possible way.
I know you do. And which side of the road do we drive on? We might all be hitting each other.
Down the middle. You just pick a lane.
Yeah, well, that's what they do now anyway. Yeah. It doesn't matter. I know I've only ever driven in Paris once, and I thought I'm never doing that again. Yeah. It's like a game of dodgems.
Well, Amsterdam is even worse.
Oh, I don't know. I've only walked in Amsterdam. Well, I said I walked.
Crawled on all fours.
Well,
wriggled along the pavement like a worm. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I didn't even know which hotel I was booked into.
No, I bet. Yeah.
You know, this was in.
You want to tie a string around your wrist and then tie the other end to the concierge, and then you'll never get lost. Of course, you won't be able to stray far, but you know.
No, it was. I think it was 1980, and me and a mate went over for a long weekend, and
it must be the worst place to cross the road in the world, because there's death comes hurtling at you from every direction, because it's the wrong way for a start, so you're always looking the wrong way. and you forget to look the right way, and death comes silently in vast amounts, because a road will typically be a bike lane, and you're never expecting bikes with their tiny little trings like that.
Yeah, little pedal. Yeah.
And then there's the cars, and then there's the cabs, which also go on the bit that's got trams, and trams arrive silently, and then you hear the same noise as you hear on a bike. And you look around, and a building is advancing towards you. This huge thing. And so, if you go to Amsterdam, just stay on the side of the road that your hotel happens to be on, and never cross the road. That's my advice.
Yeah, what is that big area where all the traffic meets? I can't remember that bit. Probably somewhere near the station, by a river.
Yeah.
An owl or whatever. But it is. I mean, everything's quiet. Even in 1980, when I went there, all the cars were quiet. They were them silly little DAF, they were called, weren't they? DAF.
I've got no idea. But anyway, just never cross the road. Just don't do it. Stay in the airport, in fact.
Yeah, just not out of the airport.
Yeah, just don't go. That's best.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks a lot, Dion.
Hi, Nick.
Terry.
You know, I'm deeply worried about Boris.
Oh,
I really am. You know, this seems to be like just another notch in his bedpost of lunacy, and now he thinks he's Eisenbach Kingdom Brunel. You know, it's crazy. I mean, what have we had from dear Boris? We've had, it's pretty quick off the bat to have a war with Russia. You know, he's drinking Fukushima peach juice. The NHS is going to get, the NHS is going to get not £350 million an hour, it's going to get £450 billion an hour. He's worked it out, he's done the maths.
An hour?
A day, a week, a month.
A year.
Yeah,
it must be a year, surely.
And now he's going to build a roundabout that ends up somewhere near the seaside. You know, this isn't anything to do with the left-right paradigm or the kind of the race war or the religious war. This is that Boris has got to go. He's got to go, because he's either going to start a war or he's going to do something else stupid, because he seems to have a lack of genius.
Lack of genius.
A lack of genius. He seems to be prolifically poor in judgment.
Right.
And I think he's engineering disaster.
Well, that's why Mrs. M made him our chief diplomat, because of his excellence in diplomacy.
Well, he must be good for something. I mean, he's a fun guy. You know.
What, like a mushroom, you mean? A fungi?
You know, he looks
like something that grows in a dark, damp place. Yeah, that sounds about right.
You know, if you go back to the beginning of time, you know, when records began, you know, there was someone called King John, you know, and what they said about him was he was indeed a great prince, but less than successful. Like Marius, he met with both kinds of luck.
Oh, God. This isn't a history lesson, is it? It almost sounds like poetry. You're not giving us a poetical history lesson, are you?
Boring!
Ugh.
No, but what I'm saying is that, you know, history is written by the winners. But even then it's tampered with. And great kind of things are attributed to people who are actually really quite bad, and vice versa. And I think we have to be very careful on this roundabout we're building, that we don't just end up with a lunatic like Boris building bridges to Gaga Land.
Right. Are you listening to this, Boris?
Yeah. Wait a minute.
Okay, I think you've already told him. Thanks a lot, mate. I almost followed everything you said. No, I didn't. Patrick says, no politician should ever lose their seats, Nick. All they need to do is get up at 5:30 in the morning and throw beach towels over them like our German cousins do around the hotel pools when they go on holiday. Well, it's not just the Germans, it's the British do it as well. There's no end of videos on the internet of people filming from their balconies of the morning fight to get a blooming... what do they call those things? Not lilos. You know, the bed things that are by pools. What are they called? My glamorous assistant knows. Loungers. But loungers, exactly. Loungers. I think that if you're on holiday and you have to get up with the sun to secure a lounger by the pool, then you've gone to the wrong holiday. I mean, what's by the pool anyway? Go and look at the country you're in, crying out loud, staring at the pool, never leaving the hotel compound. That's not a holiday. That's a prison sentence. Here is Torquay. Hello, Carl.
Hi.
An ecstasy of fumbling. Yes, Carl.
Hi.
Yes, Carl.
I think you said...
Please speak directly into the phone.
I am speaking. Can you hear me?
That's it. There you are.
Okay. I think you said earlier that you mentioned certain areas of the country which are beneficiaries of the EU, and they also voted to leave the EU, and that kind of confounded you. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Brexit is not an economic proposition, so that doesn't really work, does it?
It does.
It's not
Who says it's not an economic proposition?
Well, because it absolutely isn't. It's a constitutional proposition which may or may not have.
And how did you get that from the question that we were asked?
What question?
The question that was asked in the referendum that we voted on. That was what you're talking about.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And that is a constitutional issue. Should we stay in or leave the European Union? The economic consequences come from leaving the EEA, not the EU.
Right. So we answered the wrong question.
No, we answered the correct question. Our answer is being misinterpreted.
No, our answer is not being misinterpreted, because that implies that the question had some sort of specificity about it, and it didn't. I know what you're trying to say, but I don't agree with your basic premise. But good effort. Better luck next time. Shepparton. Hello, Liam. Is there anybody out there?
Hello, Nick.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to know what it is you like so much about a customs union that keeps the developing world poor.
That does what?
That keeps the developing world poor.
That keeps the developing world poor?
Yes.
How does it do that?
Well, you're a big advocate of the EU, so you know about the customs union.
Well, it's a different thing from being an advocate of the EU to seeing no problem in the situation as it existed. We were ticking along just fine, really. Why instigate such a massive upheaval just in order to be surrounded by just the notion to be surrounded by fewer foreigners?
Keeping the developing world poor is important, is it, to you?
I've got no idea what you're talking about, Liam. You have to explain yourself.
So the customs union... So above world trade prices, we operated around 16 to 17% above what world trade prices are. How the hell? Well, no, within the EU. How the hell is the developing world expected to trade within the EU?
And you think that outside of the EU we would do our best by the third world?
Well,
based on what from our history leads you to that conclusion?
From our history, I'm talking about now. Basically, you're a little EUer who doesn't understand. Yes, you are. You're a little EUer.
Oh God! Straight to the infantile insults. Have you got anything else? Because time is ticking away, Liam.
That's your bag.
My bag?
You are just
wow, it's like I've got a call from the 1960s. That's my bag, man. Well, he sounded like a hep cat.
Groovy.
Yeah, the history of this country really does indicate that we would really do our best by the third world. Or we'd barge in there, kill anybody that disagreed with our invasion, and nick all their stuff. You know, but let's not get bogged down in history, because that's dull and boring. Let's talk about bridges, baby. I'll talk about the Boris Bridge and the reason, which has been touched on by a previous caller, in just a second. First of all, I'll just go through these texts and emails and so on, and then I'll get to that. Paul says, I don't see much point in building a bridge when severing ties with I don't see much point in building a bridge when severing ties with where you're building the bridge to. Wow, complicated. This is just more Johnson buffoonery, if you ask me. Well, I didn't ask you.
No one said that IQ is the only measure
He's our chief diplomat. You believe that?
No.
Steve says the world is going through a backward renaissance. They happen every 200 years or so. Well, I think the human race has peaked. And a lot of the callers to this show have underlined that fact. No offence. Stefano says, I do not mean to be disrespectful. Oh, right. So everything that follows this is disrespectful. Grip onto something firm. He says, I do not mean to be disrespectful, but maybe Boris Johnson forgot that there already is a tunnel between France and the UK, which is also less prone to be affected by adverse weather conditions when compared to a bridge. That's right. There's no end of ways to get... Well, there is an end of ways, but there are many ways to get from here to there. We could go by boat, for instance. The worst trip I ever had in my life was by hovercraft from Dover to Calais. I did not think I was going to arrive alive. Do they still do that? The hovercraft. I thoroughly recommend you never take it, unless they're advertising with us, in which case it's an excellent way to cross. This says his bridge idea is obviously intended to deflect attention away from Carillion and the prison scandals, and it's worked. Well, not really. We can do both at the same time. Patrick says, our gutless Mrs. May, she had 10,000 men. She marked them halfway across the bridge, and then she marked them... okay, listeners with material, please spare me. And Boris from London says, Boris was the best mayor ever, is the best minister ever, and will be the best prime minister ever. So it's an unsolicited testimonial. So Boris raised the prospect of building a bridge or a road tunnel between Britain and France. What? Bozo of the FO said out loud to the French at that meeting they had the other day during the highly successful UK-France summit, where we bravely capitulated to their every demand when we agreed to give the French £44.5 million to titivate their border in Calais. Thank goodness we've got our country back. And we don't have to spend our precious British money on any filthy European bureaucracy. And so in the midst of all this, Bozo said that there are two of the world's biggest economies and they're linked by a single railway. It's ridiculous. It is ridiculous that we are burning bridges and building them at the same time. Is any of this making any sense? Building a bridge to bolster ties between France and the UK, which sounds a lot like thwarting the will of the people to me. Just ask the man on the Southend omnibus what he thinks about building a bridge to let Johnny Foreigner come over here more easily. He'll spit out his dentures. It's not the will of the people. Not those guided by you-know-who.
I'm a nutcase.
This isn't the first time Boris has talked up a bridge, by the way, in private conversations. At the 2016 Tory party conference in Birmingham, he said, if you want to show your commitment to Europe, it is not time for us to have further and better economic... Is it not time for us to have further and better economic integration with the road tunnel? 2 years ago, he was for more economic integration. And if it got built, we could call it the Boris Bridge.
Oh, no.
That's a pretty good reason not to have one. And the thing that I've been getting at all this time, is that the Channel is the busiest shipping lane in the world. About 600 ships pass through the gap between us and France every day. And unless the bridge is going to be one long, unsupported span, it will need supports, which ships will crash into on the hour, every hour, I'd expect. We could add it to the other genius transport idea from Office Boris. The cable car over the Thames. That's like I said before, I bet most people have forgotten it's even there. Still catering for the same 16 regular users and at a cost of only £60 million. And is this the same country that can't fix the potholes in the road or operate on you in anything other than an emergency for lack of money? Where are we going to get the billions it would cost for a bridge that long? We could borrow it from the Germans, maybe. It's a good job Boris isn't in charge of anything important now, or we'd really be in trouble.